Nakey Jakey is by far my favorite YouTuber. If you've never heard of him, there will be a link in the description. I'd definitely check him out. But part of the reason that I like him so much is because I love when a piece of media is presented well or has a unique form of presentation. Most of Jakey's content isn't breaking new grounds or anything like that, but the way that he presents it to the viewer is more creative and unlike anything I've ever seen. My favorite video on this entire platform is his video, Dark Souls Saved Me, because it's unlike any piece of media that I've ever consumed. It's more engaging and specifically intimate than anything I've ever read, watched, or seen. The video doesn't have much structure to it, and almost no editing whatsoever aside from a few cuts. But that's not what the video is about. The video is just Jakey speaking truthfully, telling a story where he feels truly vulnerable, because throughout the entire video he is laid down on his bed wrapped in a blanket, and he never looks directly into the camera, giving a sense of insecurity and vulnerability while he spills his guts to the viewer. Also, the camera is positioned slightly above Jakey's head and tilted down in a high angle shot, so that he literally and figuratively feels below the viewer, but it isn't overly apparent to where it's obnoxious like in some movies. This is one of the most interesting videos I've ever seen because of the presentation. I think if this video was just his voice set to some gameplay of Dark Souls, it wouldn't have nearly resonated with me in the way that it does. Which brings me to BoJack Horseman.
Fuck, man. What else is there to say?
Netflix recently released the last few episodes of BoJack Horseman. I've been watching this show since the first season came out when I was about 13 years old. I remember watching it and being very uncomfortable at the time. The show deals with a lot of political subject matter as well as mental health and addiction, and I just wasn't very comfortable with that back then. If you can't tell by my voice, I'm from the South, Texas actually. It's a very political state. Down here we like our sweet tea and our Second Amendment, but in that way I've felt very out of place for a long time. Well, yes, I love sugary leaf juice as much as the next guy, but I can't say the same about politics. Whenever I was younger, I always used to use the excuse that I just like to be friends with everybody, so I didn't talk about religion or politics. But now that I'm older, I realize I just don't have that many opinions on the matter, but I try to be open-minded to others' opinions. And this show is partially the reason that I've realized that, because it deals with a lot of politics, and whenever somebody brings up their political opinion, I'm intrigued by the conversation that it brings up. It's one of the more interesting shows on Netflix, and it deals with mental health much more maturely than 13 Reasons Why does. That show is harmful to people seriously dealing with these issues, and I truly believe that it's dangerous. Upon watching some of the last few episodes, I found myself looking back on some of my favorite parts of the show, and just like Nakey Jakey, the ones that stuck out were the ones with the interesting presentation. Like Season 3, Episode 4, Fish Out of Water, where a large majority of the episode has no dialogue whatsoever, and the characters' thoughts and feelings were entirely portrayed through their actions. But by the title, you've probably realized that the episode I'm here to talk about is Season 5, Episode 6, Free Churro. This is the only piece of media I've ever come across that comes close to replicating Nakey Jakey's video, because this episode is not like any other of the show. In this episode, BoJack is just standing behind a podium, and he talks about his mother at her funeral, and that's all there is. There are no flashbacks in this episode, aside from the intro, but even in that, it wasn't obvious in its delivery of information. In most flashbacks in the show, there's a clear setup where BoJack is obviously being incorrect in his way of thinking or clearly doing something wrong. And then he has a That's So Raven moment where he's sent back and the viewer can see exactly this way of thinking that was instilled into him, usually by his mother or father's lack of parenting skills. But in this flashback, it's just BoJack sitting silently in the passenger seat as his dad goes on a 4-minute rant about BoJack's mother, along with some over-the-top incorrect thinking about gender roles, and then we cut into the intro sequence. There are no specifics given about how this affected BoJack later in life, but it does show that even when we don't get a flashback to specifically tell us a way that BoJack was damaged in his childhood, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's telling us it was like that constantly. Immediately after this, we get the first bit of dialogue from BoJack explaining why he was late to the service, and really this little bit of the episode is the whole reason I'm making this video, so I'd like for you to go ahead and listen.
I stopped at a Jack in the Box on the way here, and the girl behind the counter said, "Hiya, are you having an awesome day?" Not, "How are you doing today?" No, "Are you having an awesome day?" Which is pretty shitty because it puts the onus on me to disagree with her. Like if I'm not having an awesome day, suddenly I'm the negative one. Usually when people ask how I'm doing, the real answer is I'm doing shitty. But I can't say I'm doing shitty because I don't even have a good reason to be doing shitty. So if I say I'm doing shitty, then they say, "Why? What's wrong?" And I have to be like, I don't know, all of it. So instead, when people ask how I'm doing, I usually say, I am doing so great. But when this girl at the Jack in the Box asked me if I was having an awesome day, I thought, well, today I'm actually allowed to feel shitty. Today I have a good reason. So I said to her, well, my mom died. And she immediately burst into tears. So now I have to comfort her, which is annoying. And meanwhile, there's a line of people forming behind me who are all giving me these real judgy looks because I made the Jack in the Box girl cry. And she's bawling and she's saying, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, it's fine, it's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but it's fine. And I would like to order a double Jack meal, and I've kind of got somewhere to be, so maybe less with the crying and more with the frying, huh? And the girl apologizes again, and she offers me a free churro with my meal. And as I'm leaving, I think, I just got a free churro because my mom died. No one ever tells you when your mom dies, you get a free churro. Anyway.
I remember when I first saw this episode, I was maybe 16 or 17, and I remember hearing this bit of dialogue, and something about it just stuck out to me for some reason, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But looking back on it now, I realized that it's the same reason that I love Nikki Jakey's video. The vulnerability of the speaker. Bojack is a flawed character. In fact, it's probably easier to list his good qualities than the bad ones. And we see him vulnerable in many different ways throughout the show, but I think this is the most true form of it. Throughout the show, we are shown time and time again that Beatrice Horseman was a terrible mother. And Bojack states over and over again that he resents her for it and blames her for all the mistakes he's made in his life. But in this moment, we can see what Bojack's mother means to him. It's not obvious because Bojack is hiding his feelings. But whenever I hear, "I got a free churro because my mom died," for me, it's Bojack realizing that his mother is really gone. And the rest of the eulogy is him just going through the grieving process on his own. And really, in his own way, it's beautiful. I'm not going to go any further just because it would be me just explaining the rest of the episode. And that's not the way to experience this episode. Go watch it if you haven't. It's on Netflix. You have no excuse.